Hey there everyone, welcome to my weekly messages on Jalailah Star. Today the topic is finding the value in fundamental religion. This topic came to me because of a situation that happened this past week. I wrote it on my Facebook page about, I have a brother, an older brother, we'll call him Tom, it's not his real name, I'll call him Tom. And Tom suffers from MDD, which is major depressive disorder. In the last couple of months, Tom has had a relapse, if you will, where he was ready to take his life. And it was a crisis. He hadn't had that since the late 90s after his divorce, which he said he didn't see coming. He was blindsided by it, and that kind of sent him into a tailspin. So Tom's been living here in Kansas City for a while, and I've been trying to stay in touch with him because, like a lot of people with depression, he tends to isolate himself from the family. So I've tried to stay in touch with him and, maintain some kind of contact. Well, right before Thanksgiving, a seemingly inconsequential event triggered this cascade of emotions, and he kind of came unglued. But instead of taking his life, he checked into a hospital. And so he got out right before Thanksgiving, and he had been okay until this past week when out of the blue he calls me and he says, I'm ready to, I was doing good, and now I'm back down, and he says, I'm tired, I'm ready to end it again. So I was like, having lost one of my brothers to suicide, I knew not to take that lightly. So I made arrangements for him to come and stay with me for a few days to try to kind of pull him back out of the hole. But I have to tell you, he is so ingrained in this fundamental religion that we grew up in that I was like, how am I going to possibly reach him? Because I know the only way for him to come out of this is he's got to embrace a different way of looking at his life. Because he blames himself for the destruction of his marriage. He doesn't believe that God will forgive him. He's very black and white. He doesn't believe that he has earned the right for that forgiveness. And until he feels that God could and has forgiven him, he is not going to be able to move forward. He just keeps recycling back into that. Well, it's hopeless. I'll never be forgiven. I ran away after my divorce, and I wasn't there to take care of my kids, blah, blah, blah. And even though he realizes intellectually that, he's been suffering with this mental illness since he was in his 20s, and it had progressively gotten worse to where in his early 40s, which is when major depressive disorder really blossoms, it will just destroy lives. It destroys families. It just wreaks havoc. But he doesn't take that he intellectually takes that into account, but he doesn't believe it. He's just really caught up in, I'm a sinner, and God's I'm never going to be in the kingdom of God, and I'm going to go to, lake of hellfire and brimstone. Oh my God. So to make matters worse, he shows up at my doorstep, and he looks at me and he says, you are my only hope. If this doesn't work, I'm going to end my life. Okay. No pressure there. Even though I know it's not my responsibility, I'm like, okay, I invite him over here thinking, I want to do my best. I want to be able to try. And if he then goes and does it, that's his choice. But at least I've done everything I can. So my biggest challenge was how to impart to him higher dimensional beliefs, but coached in a language he can understand, which is his religious belief system, the religious lingo that we grew up with. So you can imagine how much I begged for help, But over the course of the next 3 days, it worked. I mean, every time he'd come up with something, I'm like going, how am I going to bridge from him believing that God can't possibly forgive him? I mean, he takes, he knows the Bible, and he takes, scriptures out of the Bible to prove that God can't forgive him because God did this, God did that. And I'm like going, okay. But every time I was like, okay, I need help here. How am I going to bridge this? An analogy, a biblical analogy would pop in my head, and I'd be able to say, well, if God could do this for this person, then why wouldn't he do it for you? So anyway, I took him through that on the major beliefs because I realized we needed to build a new foundation for him. We needed to build a new foundation of beliefs that would enable him to see that he had worth, that he didn't have to earn his right to exist, and he didn't have to, and God, God or whatever. Basically, from a higher dimensional perspective, there's no sin and forgiveness or need for forgiveness because we're all souls playing roles to help each other grow. So every mistake is just an opportunity for growth. But to him, mistakes are sin and they're unforgivable. So anyway, we did, and I gave an example in the written portion of this weekly message, so I'm not going to go into it here. You can go back and read it. But anyways, at the end of 3 days, we had a new foundation for him. And he now understood why God would forgive him. And in that time, all these little miracles had come into his life to provide everything he needed to get out of the situation that caused the tailspin. And so I said, not only do you have a new plan for your life, a new way of looking at things, but you also have been shown by God that he has forgiven you because he's given you all these blessings. So he left here and he said to me on the last day, he says, I'm a little scared to go back and stay in my apartment by myself, but I'm no longer depressed. So it's like, yes, we did it. So as of today, he's still doing pretty good. Every time that he gets scared, and he has this thing of chronic worrying. He's OCD about worrying. He worries himself right into an anxiety attack. He knows how to deal with that. So we gave him tools to deal with his OCD. We gave him tools to be able to, or higher dimensional beliefs to be able to see why, his life is going to be better. And at the same time, I realized that the purpose for all that at the end was that he was here to awaken. So I told him a little bit about who the gods of the Bible were and that kind of thing. He's like, oh. And he's a big researcher, so I know he'll go research the heck out of that. But anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to share with all of you is that many of us who are star seeds are going to have people, friends and family who awaken. But they're going to be awakening and their conditioning has been 3D religion. The purpose for our going through that religion, because many of us didn't believe that there was a purpose for our going through religious training as kids, is we can speak the language now. We know how to use the language of the Bible to reach our family and friends at a place where they can understand us. Because awakening is like a stair-step thing, or like a ladder. You got to go a rung at a time. So I just took my brother from where he was to the next rung. I didn't try to take him way up here. I took him to the very next one, but I had to use the lingo that he would understand to get him there. So for those of you who feel that your religious training had no purpose, it did. You're probably going to be using it with people you never thought would ever awaken. All right, you take care, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.